The video never loads clean. Pixels smear. Sound warps. Someone is running. You hear it before you see it. Boots hit wet concrete. Too fast, too close. A turn comes hard. The frame lurches. Chain link, reflective tape, light blown out white. A command cuts through. Short, sharp, then the dog. Not warning, not distance. Close, immediate, wrong. The camera dips. A storm drain opens like a mouth. Water roars loud enough to erase words. The image drops to black. No impact, no answers. Only the bark continues, 2 beats too long, until the audio dies like it was shut off by hand. The first time the video surfaced, it was already half destroyed. A clipped upload, shaky, overcompressed, the kind of footage that looked like it had been copied, reposted, and copied again until the pixels softened around the edges like bruises. It began with a sprint, boots pounding wet concrete, then a sudden lurch as the camera wearer hit a turn too hard. The lens caught a blur of chain link fencing, a flash of reflective tape, and a bright white smear of streetlight. A voice barked a command. Then another sound cut through it, sharp, frantic, unmistakable. A dog's bark, not playful, not warning from a distance. Close. Immediate. Like something was about to happen, and the animal knew it before the human mind could translate it. The footage jolted toward a storm drain, mouth big enough to swallow a person. Water roared under the city, loud enough to swallow words. The camera swung down, caught the dark throat of the tunnel, and then black. No impact, no resolution. Just the bark continuing for 2 more beats, echoing inside concrete, until the audio clipped out like someone had reached in and pinched the world between their fingers. By the time Officer Ethan Cole saw it, the clip had already sparked a rumor. A K-9 unit went down under Harbor City's old waterfront, and someone didn't want anybody asking why. Ethan didn't care about rumor. He cared about patterns. And the pattern was this. People were getting hurt, one after another, right after they spoke up about the waterfront redevelopment. Witnesses, complainants, anyone who'd filed a grievance or signed their name on a report that might slow down money. Harbor City called it progress. Glass towers, new marinas, a revitalized riverwalk. Ethan called it something else, a pressure system, because pressure didn't announce itself until something cracked. He stood in Captain Maria Hayes' doorway while she watched the same clip on her monitor, her face lit by cold screen glow. Maria was pragmatic in a way that made panic feel childish. She didn't waste words or emotion. When she finally paused the video, she didn't look up right away. "That bark," she said quietly. Ethan's eyes stayed on the frozen frame. Stormwater froth in the lower corner, a sliver of tunnel visible like a throat. "That's shadow," he said. Not pride, not sentiment, just fact. Maria turned in her chair. "I'm aware." The office smelled like coffee and paper and the faint metallic tang of rain that had blown in when someone opened the precinct doors too fast. Outside, radios crackled, phones rang. A printer spit out something nobody would read until it mattered too late. "You weren't on that call," Maria said. "No," Ethan replied. Maria's gaze sharpened. "Then why do you think it was him?" Ethan didn't flinch. He never did, not when questioned, not when accused, not when someone tried to stir the pond and see what rose up. "Shadow barks different when he's afraid," Ethan said. Maria's eyes narrowed. She knew the dog, too. Shadow had been part of the department long enough to become a quiet legend, smart, steady, expressive, without being theatrical. He didn't waste energy. He didn't bark because the world was loud. He barked because something mattered. Maria leaned back slowly. "We've got 3 incidents in 2 weeks," she said. 2 vehicle accidents, and 1 fall off a loading dock. "All after statements," Ethan said. Maria slid a folder across the desk. "And now a 4th, a missing witness." Ethan's hand didn't rush to grab it. He didn't snatch. He didn't pounce. He just looked at it like it was already part of him. "Name?" he asked. Maria hesitated. Just a fraction. That was enough. "Dr. Lena Moore," she said. Ethan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Lena wasn't just a name on paper. She was brilliant, introspective, and careful in ways the rest of them relied on. A forensic analyst who could look at a smear, a fiber, a fracture in a lie, and tell you what story it was trying to hide. She also had the kind of quiet integrity that made powerful people uncomfortable. Maria kept her voice level. "She called me directly last night, said she had something she didn't want in a formal channel, said she'd deliver it in person." "And?" Ethan asked, though he already felt the shape of the answer. She never arrived. Ethan's eyes went back to the body cam still, the tunnel, the roar. Maria watched him. We can't turn this into a war, she warned, not without proof. Ethan nodded once. It wasn't agreement. It was acknowledgement. I'm not asking for a war, he said. Maria waited. Ethan's voice stayed calm. I'm asking for a clean lane. Maria exhaled. You'll have it, she said, but if you go outside it, if you start freelancing. I won't, Ethan replied. It wasn't a promise to please her. It was a promise to himself. His code didn't bend because he was angry. His code held especially when he was angry. Maria nodded. Take Lucas, she said. He's hungry. He'll notice details you ignore. Ethan almost smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Shadow? Maria asked. Ethan's gaze shifted toward the door, as if the dog might already be waiting there, hearing his name through walls. Shadow stays with me, Ethan said. No argument, Maria replied. Just don't get him hurt. Ethan's calm didn't change, but something deep inside him tightened, like a strap pulled snug. I don't, he said. Shadow was already up when Ethan reached the kennel area. The dog rose in one smooth motion, black and tan coat, alert ears, eyes that seemed too intelligent to belong to an animal that couldn't speak. He didn't bark. He didn't whine. He simply looked at Ethan and waited. That was the thing with Shadow. He didn't demand. He partnered. Ethan knelt, checked the harness, ran a hand along Shadow's ribs the way you checked a seatbelt before a drive. Shadow leaned into the touch for one brief second, then squared again. You ready? Ethan asked. Shadow's tail gave one measured sweep. Not excited, focused. Deputy Lucas Reed appeared 2 seconds later, coffee in hand, hair still damp like he'd rushed out of the shower and into the day. Lucas had energy that bordered on reckless optimism, but he wasn't stupid. Competent, sharp, and just humorous enough to keep a room from turning into a tomb. You know, Lucas said, eyeing Shadow, he looks like he could judge my life choices without speaking. Shadow's ears flicked. Ethan clipped the leash to the harness. He can, Ethan said. Lucas made an offended face. I knew it. They moved fast, not frantic. Fast the way you moved when you understood time was a weapon and you intended to hold it. The Waterfront redevelopment zone was a patchwork of old and new, rusted warehouses next to fresh scaffolding, broken cobblestone streets leading into sleek temporary fencing printed with glossy banners. Riverfront Renaissance, a new harbor city, live, work, play. Ethan read those words like they were a threat. They stopped at the loading dock where the accident had happened, the third incident. A witness had allegedly slipped and fallen into a shallow channel between pilings. Minor injuries. Lucky. Lucky meant someone had survived what wasn't meant to be survivable. Lucas crouched near the dock edge, eyes scanning. They say he tripped on a loose board, Lucas muttered. Ethan didn't answer. Shadow's nose moved in small, precise sweeps over wood and metal. The dog's pace slowed at a corner where a security camera pointed down. Shadow's breathing changed slightly, nostrils flaring. Ethan noticed because he always noticed. Shadow paused, looked up at Ethan, then swung his head toward a dark smear near a bolt. Ethan crouched. The smear wasn't blood, too glossy, too uniform. He lifted his fingers, barely touched it, then brought his hand to his nose. A sharp chemical bite hit the back of his throat. Solvent, Ethan said quietly. Lucas blinked. Like paint thinner? Industrial, Ethan replied. Strong, fresh. Lucas's gaze lifted toward the glossy banners. You think they lubricated the board? Made it slick? Ethan didn't commit to the idea yet, but his mind filed it where it belonged. Shadow moved again, tracing the scent trail along the dock edge, then down a staircase that led under the structure. His posture tightened, not aggressive, but intent, like a needle finding thread. Ethan followed. Under the dock, the air was cooler, damp, and alive with the smell of river mud. The city above sounded distant. Here, the waterfront's old bones showed, rotted beams, rusted brackets, graffiti half hidden behind newer construction. Shadow's nose led them to a low concrete pillar. At the base, a small plastic cap rested like trash. Ethan picked it up with a gloved hand. The cap smelled like the same solvent. Lucas leaned in. That's not random, he said. No, Ethan agreed. It's repetition. Lucas straightened, scanning the shadows. So someone's staging accidents with this stuff. Ethan looked at the cap, then at Shadow. "What else smells like this?" Ethan asked the dog softly. Shadow didn't answer with words. He answered the way he always did, by moving. He turned and walked, leash slack because Ethan didn't pull. Shadow led. They surfaced from under the dock and headed toward a restricted area where private security stood at a gate, uniforms crisp, posture bored. Their patches weren't city, not state, a corporate insignia with an eagle and a shield. Harbor Guard Private Security. The guard stepped forward. "Restricted," he said. Ethan flashed his badge. "Police. We're investigating an injury." The guard's eyes flicked to the badge, then to Shadow. "No dogs," he said too quickly. Ethan's gaze sharpened. "He's a K-9, Ethan said. "He goes where I go." The guard's jaw tightened. "It's private property," he insisted. Lucas stepped up beside Ethan, keeping his tone light. "And we're on a public dock that's currently attached to an active investigation," Lucas said. "So, unless you want to explain to Captain Hayes why you interfered." The guard held up a hand. "Fine," he snapped. He unlatched the gate, but the movement was stiff, irritated. They walked in. Shadow's head was low now, scenting the gravel. He pulled slightly, just a fraction. Ethan felt the shift like a change in weather. They reached a maintenance shed, plain metal, no signage, the kind of building you ignored until you learned it mattered. Shadow stopped at the door seam, inhaled, then sat, alert, signal. Ethan's spine tightened. Lucas whispered, "That's his 'I found something' sit, right?" Ethan nodded once. He knocked, firm, professional. No answer. He tried the handle, locked. Ethan looked at Lucas. "Call Maria," he said. "Tell her we've got a solvent trace tied to Harbor Guard property." Lucas already had his phone out. "On it." Ethan stepped back and studied the door. No camera, no obvious alarm. Shadow's ears stayed forward. Ethan made a decision. He didn't break in, not yet, not without a warrant, not without the clean lane Maria promised. Instead, he marked it, photographed the latch, the hinges, the surrounding dirt. He found a footprint half-pressed into gravel, fresh, deep tread. He took the photo. Lucas finished his call, face tight. "Maria says she'll push for a warrant," Lucas reported, "but she wants us to find Lena first." Ethan's jaw tightened again. "Last known?" Ethan asked. Lucas pulled up his notes. "She was headed from the lab to meet Maria, but her car never reached the precinct." Ethan looked out toward the Riverwalk. Tourists strolled and laughed like the world was safe. Construction cranes moved slow as predators in the distance. "Then we don't chase the money first," Ethan said. "We chase the person." Shadow rose without being told. "Ready." Ethan's phone buzzed. "Maria," he answered. "Go." Maria didn't waste breath. "We got a ping," she said. Lena's phone hit a tower near the old pump station on Canal Street. Then it went dark. Ethan's eyes narrowed. The pump station sat at the edge of the waterfront's older infrastructure, half abandoned, half claimed by the city. A place where stormwater met the underbelly of Harbor City. A place you could vanish into if you knew how. Ethan looked at Shadow. Shadow looked back. "Send units," Ethan said. Maria's voice hardened. "Ethan." "I'm going," Ethan said, calm as stone. "We're going." A beat of silence. Then, "Be smart," Maria said. Ethan's voice didn't change. "Always?" The pump station looked like a forgotten tooth in the city's jaw. Concrete walls stained dark by decades of moisture. Rusted signage. A chain-link fence with a gap where someone had cut and bent it back like a mouth pried open. Ethan parked a block away. He didn't pull up like a siren. He didn't announce. He approached with the kind of quiet that came from training and instinct. Lucas followed, swallowing hard. "This place gives me horror movie vibes," Lucas muttered. Ethan's eyes stayed forward. "Stay behind me," he said. Lucas tried to joke. "That's my favorite position in life." Shadow led, leash loose, paws silent on wet ground. As they entered the fence gap, Shadow's posture shifted, stiffer, lower. He caught a scent. Something human. Fresh fear. Ethan's pulse didn't spike. His pulse rarely spiked anymore. It tightened, like a muscle preparing to do its job. They moved around the building. A side door hung slightly open. Ethan lifted a hand for Lucas to stop. Shadow's ears angled toward the crack. From inside, a faint sound. Not a scream, not a struggle. A breath, the kind someone tried to keep quiet. Ethan drew his flashlight but kept it angled down. No silhouette gifts. He nudged the door wider with his boot. Inside, the air was colder, damp with the smell of old river rot and metal. Shadow stepped in first, silent. Ethan followed. The room opened into a narrow corridor lit by a single overhead bulb that flickered like it couldn't decide whether it wanted to exist. Halfway down the corridor, a figure sat on the floor, hands bound behind her, mouth taped, eyes wide. Dr. Lena Moore. Her hair was disheveled, one cheek reddened where someone had grabbed her too hard, but her eyes, those sharp, introspective eyes, were alive, furious, focused. Ethan moved in 2 strides. He knelt, cut the tape with a small blade, then freed her wrists. Lena sucked in air like she'd been underwater. "Ethan," she rasped. "I'm here," he said, voice low. "Can you stand?" Lena shook her head. She swallowed, forcing control back into her voice. "They tried to move me. I fought. They left me when they heard something outside." Shadow pressed close to her, sniffing, then leaned in. Lena's hand, shaking, found the dog's fur and gripped like it was an anchor. Ethan scanned the corridor. "Any idea who?" Ethan asked. Lena's jaw tightened. "Private security," she said. "Harbor guard and someone else, someone who knew my schedule." Lucas swallowed, eyes wide. "Inside?" he whispered. Lena's gaze lifted to Ethan. "They want the evidence gone," she said, "and they want me quiet." Ethan's voice stayed calm. "What evidence?" Lena reached into her pocket, empty now, and her face tightened with frustration. "I had a drive," she said. "They took it." Ethan nodded, mind already building a new map. "We get you out," he said. "Then we get it back." A sound echoed, boots on concrete, approaching. Ethan's hand lifted, still, quiet. Shadow's ears snapped forward. Lena's breath caught. Lucas whispered, "We're not alone." Ethan didn't answer with words. He answered by shifting his body between Lena and the corridor's mouth, placing himself like a wall, calm and unbreakable. And in the low light of the pump station, with the city's stormwater roaring somewhere beneath them, Ethan Cole made a choice that wasn't dramatic. It was disciplined. It was protective. It was inevitable. The footsteps came again, closer this time, then stopped, as if the person on the other side of the corridor had sensed the room's temperature shift. Ethan held still. In his world, stillness wasn't hesitation. It was calculation. It was the space between stimulus and response, the place where discipline lived. Shadow's body angled forward, weight slightly shifted onto his front paws, not lunging, not barking. Ready. Lena's hand stayed buried in the fur at Shadow's neck, like she could feel the dog's heartbeat and borrow steadiness from it. Lucas, behind Ethan, kept his breathing shallow. Ethan didn't need to look back to know Lucas was scared. Ethan could hear it in the absence of jokes. A shadow crossed the flickering bulb outside the room. A voice followed, low, confident, trying to sound bored. "Hello?" it called. "City maintenance. Anybody in here?" Ethan's eyes narrowed. City maintenance didn't show up unannounced after midnight, and city maintenance didn't wear boots that heavy. Ethan leaned in toward Lena, voice barely more than breath. "Can you move?" Lena swallowed. "My wrists are numb," she whispered, "but I can roll onto my knees." "Do it," Ethan said. He turned his head slightly toward Lucas. "When I say, you move Lena behind me. Keep her low." Lucas nodded once, face pale. His hand hovered near his radio. Ethan raised his voice just enough to carry. "Harbor City Police," he called. "Step into the light." Silence. Then the voice changed, no longer pretending. "Officer," it said, now edged with irritation, "you're not supposed to be here." That was the tell. Not "who are you?" Not "what are you doing?" Just, "You're not supposed to be here." Ethan stepped forward into the corridor, staying near the wall so his silhouette didn't fill the doorway. The bulb above buzzed, angry, weak. The man at the corridor's far end wore a dark uniform with no city insignia. Harbor guard patch. His posture wasn't the posture of a random hired muscle. He moved like someone who'd done this a long time, comfortable in tight spaces, comfortable with other people's fear. His eyes flicked down to Shadow. "Nice dog," the man said. "You got a warrant for your presence." Ethan's voice stayed calm. "Where's Dr. Moore's drive?" The man's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I don't know what you're talking about." Ethan held his gaze. "You do." Another pair of boots approached from behind the harbor guard man. Another uniformed figure, broader shoulders, hands near his belt. 2 of them, not 3, not a squad, a small team sent to clean up. Ethan's mind clicked through options. He didn't want to fight here, Not for himself, for Lena. Tight space, bad angles, unknown numbers. But he also knew one thing with absolute clarity. If he backed up without Lena safe, they would take her again, and if they took her again, she might not come back. Ethan's hand rested lightly on Shadow's harness, pressure that meant stay, a silent command. Shadow didn't need the leash to understand. Ethan spoke again, voice even. "You're holding a witness. That's kidnapping. You're obstructing a police investigation." The first harbor guard man shrugged. "You've got proof?" Ethan didn't answer, because proof was what Lena had, and Lena was behind him, breathing, alive. The second man stepped forward half a pace. "We're not here to hurt anyone," he said, but his eyes were flat. "Just making sure misunderstandings don't become headlines." Ethan's gaze sharpened. "A misunderstanding is when someone misreads a sign," he said. "This is a crime." The first man's jaw tightened. "You want to play hero?" Ethan's tone didn't change. "I want the drive." The man laughed once, humorless. "Then come take it." Ethan moved, not toward them, backward, one step, just enough to draw them forward. Predators hated losing the initiative. They followed movement like a reflex. And when the first man stepped into the corridor's center line, Shadow reacted, not with noise, but with motion. A blur of muscle and intent. Shadow didn't bite. Not yet. He surged forward, a controlled feint, snapping the air near the man's knee and forcing him to flinch back. It wasn't attack. It was disruption. It was a reminder. You are not alone in here. The man cursed, startled. Ethan used that half-second to close distance, fast, precise, driving his shoulder into the man's chest and pinning him against the wall. Ethan's forearm pressed in, not choking, just controlling. The second harbor guard man reached for Ethan, but Lucas moved then, stepping in with the baton he'd pulled from his belt, jabbing it hard into the man's midsection. Lucas's eyes were wide, but his movement was clean. The man grunted, folding. Ethan's voice stayed calm even as he applied pressure. "Where's the drive?" The pinned man spat. "Go to hell!" Shadow stood 2 feet away, silent, eyes bright, watching. Ethan didn't escalate. He didn't strike. He didn't punish. He shifted his grip slightly, forcing the man's shoulder joint into a painful angle. The man's breath hitched. Okay, he hissed. "Locker. Maintenance locker." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Which one?" "Basement," the man choked out. "Red tag. That's all I know." Ethan released him with a shove that sent him stumbling, not falling. The second man, still recovering from Lucas's baton jab, glared at Lucas with something like disbelief. "You're gonna regret that," the man growled. Lucas's voice cracked, but held. "Take a number." Ethan didn't let them reset. He pointed. "Out," he said. "Flat, final, now." The first man's eyes flicked to Shadow again, then to Ethan's face. For a moment, Ethan saw it. The calculation, the realization that this wasn't a normal cop, that this wasn't a normal day. The man backed away. So did the second. They didn't run. They retreated, slow, saving face, disappearing into the corridor darkness the way people did when they believed they would have leverage later. When their footsteps faded, Ethan turned. Lena was on her knees now, trembling. Lucas hovered behind her, breathing hard. Ethan crouched to Lena's level. "Can you walk?" he asked again. Lena shook her head. "Not far," she rasped. "They hit my wrist when I tried to grab the drive." Ethan nodded once. "Then we move carefully." He glanced at Lucas. "Call Maria, now." Lucas grabbed his radio, voice shaky but fast. "Captain Hayes, we found Dr. Moore at Canal Pump Station. She's alive. Harbor guard on scene, 2 individuals. They claim they put evidence in a maintenance locker. We need units." Maria's response crackled through the radio, tight, controlled. "Stay put. Backup is en route. Ethan, do not chase them." Ethan's eyes stayed on the corridor. His voice into the radio was calm. "Copy." He clicked it off, but his mind didn't stop. He didn't chase them. Not yet. He stayed with Lena until the first patrol unit arrived, sirens muted, lights off, until the last second. Maria herself arrived minutes later, stepping out of her car with the posture of someone who refused to be impressed. She scanned the pump station corridor, took in the scene, then fixed her eyes on Ethan. "Report," she said. Ethan kept it tight. 2 harbor guard uniforms, he said. They admitted to moving her and stashing the drive in a basement maintenance locker. Red tag. Maria's jaw clenched. "You get their names?" They didn't offer, Ethan replied. Maria exhaled slowly. Then she looked at Lena, her expression softening just a fraction. "Lena," she said, voice gentler, "you okay?" Lena's laugh was a dry cough. "Define okay." Maria nodded once. "Ambulance is coming," she said. Then she looked back at Ethan. "You and Lucas come with me," she ordered. "We're going for that locker, but we're doing it clean." Ethan didn't argue. That was the thing with Maria. She wasn't an obstacle. She was the lane. They moved as a unit. 2 patrol officers stayed with Lena. EMTs arrived, checked her vitals, wrapped her wrist. Shadow stayed close, sitting near her feet like a living promise. When Maria led Ethan and Lucas down into the pump station basement, the air changed. Colder, wetter, the kind of place where sound traveled wrong. The lockers were old metal, lined against a wall like forgotten teeth. Many were dented, some rusted. One had a bright red tag tied to its handle. Ethan felt the small tightening in his chest, a sensation he didn't label as hope because hope was unreliable. Maria pulled on gloves. "Photograph everything," she told Lucas. Lucas nodded, pulling out his phone and the department camera, hands steadier now that he had instructions. Maria opened the locker carefully. Inside, a small black evidence pouch. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "That's too neat," he murmured. Maria didn't look at him. "Probably staged," she agreed. "But we'll treat it as evidence." Lucas photographed the pouch, the locker, the tag, Maria's gloved hands lifting it out. Maria unzipped it. Inside was a thumb drive, silver, plain, unmarked, Lena's drive. Maria held it like it weighed more than metal. "Bag it," she said. Lucas did, sealed it, labeled, time-stamped. Then something shifted. A faint buzz, electric, followed by a click. The overhead basement light went out. For a split second, darkness swallowed them. Lucas cursed softly. "Power's out." Maria's voice stayed sharp. "Flashlights." Ethan already had his out, beam cutting through the dark. But Ethan didn't focus on the locker now. He focused on the sound. A door somewhere above, closing too softly. Footsteps. Someone had timed this. Someone had cut the power to create confusion, to create an excuse for evidence to disappear. Maria inhaled once, controlled. "Nobody moves," she ordered. Lucas froze. Ethan's light swept the stairs. Shadow wasn't with them. Shadow was upstairs with Lena, which meant Ethan had one less set of senses in the dark. Ethan's breathing stayed even. He whispered, not to Maria, not to Lucas, more to the space itself. "They're still here." Maria's jaw clenched. "We're leaving," she said. "Now?" Lucas's voice was shaky. "What if they—" Maria cut him off. "Now!" They moved up the stairs in tight formation. Ethan first, Maria second, Lucas third, evidence bag pressed to Lucas's chest like a heartbeat. At the top, the pump station corridor felt wrong. Too quiet. The overhead bulb was off now, too. Maria's flashlight swept the hall. "Units!" she called into her radio. Static. Then a voice clipped. "Captain, we've got a problem." Maria's shoulders tightened. "Say again." "Ambulance just left with Dr. Moore," the voice said. "But Harbor Guard vehicles are blocking the exit. They're claiming jurisdiction. They're trying to reroute—" Maria's voice turned to steel. "They don't have jurisdiction," she snapped. "Hold position. Ethan, Lucas, move." They rushed outside. The night air hit like a slap. 2 dark SUVs sat near the pump station gate, headlights on, positioned in a way that looked accidental until you knew what to look for. 2 Harbor Guard men stood near the ambulances, hands up, smiling like they were doing a favor. Lena was on a stretcher, strapped down, her face pale. Shadow sat at her side, harness on, eyes fixed on Ethan the moment he appeared. Ethan's chest tightened. Not fear. Anger, controlled so hard it felt like ice. Maria strode forward, badge out. "Move your vehicles," she commanded. The Harbor Guard man raised his hands in mock apology. "Captain Hayes," he said, "we're just ensuring Dr. Moore gets to the right facility. Private contract medical—" Maria stepped closer, her voice quiet enough to be lethal. "Touch my witness," she said, "and you'll be in handcuffs before you finish your sentence." The man's smile faltered. "We're authorized." "By who?" Maria snapped. The man hesitated. That was enough. Ethan moved to Lena's side. He placed a hand on Shadow's harness, grounding. Shadow's tail gave one slow sweep, then stilled again. Lena's eyes found Ethan. "They're trying to separate me," she whispered. Ethan's voice was low. "They won't," he said. Lucas, still clutching the evidence bag, stood behind Maria, eyes scanning, ready to follow. Maria lifted her radio again, voice sharp and clear. "All units, block the gate. Do not allow private vehicles to reroute the ambulance. This is a police transport. Repeat, police transport." This time the radio answered. Patrol cars moved in, lights flashed, tires squealed. The harbor guard man's smile died completely. The SUVs rolled away, slow. The ambulance doors closed. Lena's hand, still trembling, reached down and brushed Shadow's head. Shadow leaned into it once, then sat again, unshakable. Ethan watched the ambulance pull away, escorted by patrol cars. Maria turned to Ethan and Lucas. "We've got the drive," she said. Ethan nodded. "Now we need what's on it," he replied. Maria's eyes narrowed. "And we need to keep it from disappearing." Lucas held the bag up slightly, like he understood now the weight of what he carried. Maria's voice dropped. "Back to the precinct," she ordered. "Straight to the evidence room. And Ethan." Ethan met her gaze. Maria's voice was quiet. "They're going to push back," she said. "Hard." Ethan's tone stayed calm. "Let them," he said. The precinct at night had a different personality. In daylight, it was all routine and paperwork, and the low-grade stress of a city that never stopped calling for help. At night it became quieter, more honest. Less show, more nerve endings. Ethan liked nights for that reason. Noise stripped away. What remained was signal. They moved through the lobby with purpose, Maria in front, Ethan at her shoulder, Lucas trailing with the evidence bag, held close like it was fragile glass. Shadow walked at Ethan's side until they reached the K9 holding area. Ethan paused, crouched, and checked Shadow's harness again, not because it needed checking, but because touch was a language Shadow understood. "You did good," Ethan murmured. Shadow's ears flicked, his tail gave one slow sweep. Maria kept walking, already heading for the evidence room. "Ethan," she called back, sharp. Ethan stood. "Shadow stays with Lena," he said. Maria stopped mid-step. "She's at the hospital." "I know," Ethan replied. "Shadow goes with her." Maria's gaze tightened, the pragmatic calculation turning. Policy doesn't sniff solvents," Ethan said calmly. "And if someone tries to move her again, Shadow will know before a nurse does." Maria stared at him for a beat. Then she exhaled, one controlled release that sounded like surrender to reality. "Fine," she said, "but you stay here. You don't freelance at a hospital." "I won't," Ethan said. He looked at Lucas. "You drive Shadow," he instructed. "Stay in the lobby until they clear you in. You don't leave him with anyone you don't trust." Lucas nodded, eyes wide with the seriousness of being handed something bigger than his rookie instincts. "Got it," Lucas said. He glanced at Shadow. "We're going on a field trip, buddy." Shadow stared at him like he was assessing risk. Lucas swallowed. "Okay, I'll be quiet." Ethan watched them go, then followed Maria down the hall toward the evidence room. The evidence room was small, windowless, and cold, lit by fluorescent lights that made everything look clinical and guilty. The shelves were lined with boxes and bags, objects that had once been part of someone's life before becoming part of a case file. Maria typed the entry code. The door clicked open. Inside, Officer Miller was already there. Desk sergeant, middle-aged, rumpled uniform, that same weary expression that suggested he'd seen everything and cared about none of it. He looked up when Maria entered, then his gaze drifted to Ethan. His eyes narrowed just slightly, as if Ethan's presence was an inconvenience. Maria didn't waste breath. "Evidence transfer," she said. "Urgent." Miller leaned back in his chair. "At this hour?" he asked, voice heavy with doubt. "Yes," Maria replied. "At this hour. Move." Lucas stepped in behind them, clutching the sealed evidence bag like it was a beating heart. Miller's eyes flicked to Lucas's hands. "What is it?" he asked. Maria's voice was calm but hard. "A thumb drive recovered from a kidnapping scene," she said. "Chain of custody starts now." Miller's mouth tightened. "Kidnapping," he repeated, like the word tasted expensive. Ethan watched him carefully. Miller reached out, slow, for the bag. Ethan stepped forward half a pace, just enough to make the movement not confrontational but noticeable. Miller's eyes flicked up. "Problem, officer?" Ethan's voice stayed level. "We log it," Ethan said. Then it goes in a secured locker. Miller's brow furrowed. "That's what I do," he said. Maria cut in before the tension could sharpen. "We log it," she repeated. "Now." Miller took the bag, turned to his computer, and began typing. Ethan watched its fingers. Not the keys, the rhythm. A person who typed routinely did it with a certain speed. Miller typed slower now, more deliberate than necessary. He was thinking. He wasn't just logging. He was weighing. Ethan's gaze slid to the monitor. He couldn't see the whole screen from this angle, but he could see enough. The case number field, the category, the location input. Miller paused at the notes section. His eyes flicked toward Maria, toward Ethan, back to the screen. Then he typed something that made Ethan's jaw tighten. "Related parties," Miller muttered aloud as he typed, like he was narrating for legitimacy. "Just log it," Maria snapped. Miller's voice stayed calm. "Just doing it right," he replied. Ethan saw it then, a name appearing on the screen. Not Lena's, not Ethan's. A corporate entity, Harbor Guard. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Why are you adding them as a related party?" Ethan asked quietly. Miller's fingers froze. He turned, expression defensive. "They're involved," he said. "They're suspects," Ethan replied, "not related parties." Miller's jaw worked. "It's standard," he insisted. Maria stepped closer, her presence filling the small room like a storm front. "It is not standard," she said. "Remove it." Miller looked at her. Then, slowly, he did. But the moment was already logged inside Ethan's mind, filed under the category that mattered most: interference. Miller finished typing, printed a label, stuck it on the evidence bag, and slid it toward Maria. Maria grabbed it. "Locker," she ordered. Miller pointed to a cabinet. "Slot 3, he said. Maria placed the bag inside, locked it, and pocketed the key. Ethan watched the cabinet door close and felt no relief at all. Because relief was for people who believed danger ended when a door shut. Ethan knew better. They left the evidence room. Maria didn't speak until they were down the hall, away from ears and cameras. Then she turned, face tight. "You saw that," she said. Ethan nodded. Maria's voice lowered. "Miller's compromised," she said, "or scared, or both." Ethan's tone stayed flat. "He already dismissed victims tied to this redevelopment," Ethan replied. Maria's eyes hardened. "Then we stopped treating this like a normal case," she said. "We move smart." Ethan didn't argue. "What's on the drive?" he asked. Maria inhaled. "We don't know yet," she said, "but Lena risked her life to protect it. That means it isn't a rumor. It's something that breaks the machine." Ethan's gaze sharpened. "We open it now," he said. Maria's jaw clenched. "Not in the precinct," she replied. "Not on a system that touches the network." Ethan nodded once. He'd already been thinking the same thing. Maria turned and started walking. "We're going to the lab," she said. "Offline terminal. No Wi-Fi, no cloud." In the lab, the air smelled like disinfectant and plastic. It was quiet, the kind of quiet where fluorescent lights sounded like insects. Maria unlocked the evidence cabinet, pulled out the drive, bagged, logged, clean. She handed it to Ethan. Ethan didn't plug it in. He held it for a moment, feeling its weight, not physical, symbolic. Then he slid it into an offline laptop that Lena had set up months ago for sensitive forensic extractions. Lucas returned then, breathless. "Shadow's with her," he reported. "Hospital security was weird about it, but I did the official K9 unit voice, and they backed down." Maria glanced at him. "Good," she said. "Stay." Ethan opened the drive. A folder appeared. Not one file. Dozens. Ethan clicked one. Video. He pressed play. A hidden camera angle inside a conference room. A long table. Men in suits. A projector screen glowing. Audio wasn't great, but it was clear enough. A voice spoke. Smooth. Corporate. Practiced. "We can't have delays," the voice said. "The city council hearing next month is the last friction point." Another voice. "The complainants are multiplying." The first voice again, calm, irritated. "Then reduce them." There was a pause. Then make them scared. Ethan's spine tightened. Maria's face went still, the kind of stillness that signaled anger contained. Lucas swallowed, eyes wide. "Is that legal?" he whispered. Ethan didn't answer. The video continued. A third voice spoke, this one colder, clipped. "Accidents happen," it said. "People slip, cars drift, witnesses lose nerve." Ethan's eyes narrowed. He recognized that voice, not by name, by texture. The same texture he'd heard in the precinct when Officer Miller dismissed someone with quiet contempt. Not Miller, but the type of voice. Institutional. Comfortable. The camera angle shifted slightly. Someone leaned forward in frame. A Harbor Guard executive, badge visible. He spoke like a man used to being obeyed. "We can manage the optics," he said, "but we need the police not to overreact." A man off camera chuckled softly. "We have friends." The meeting ended shortly after, men standing, shaking hands. Ethan paused the video. Silence filled the lab. Maria's voice was low. "This is conspiracy," she said. "Obstruction, witness intimidation." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And it names Harbor Guard," he said. Maria nodded. "But not enough," she replied. "We need direct ties. We need a chain." Lucas leaned forward, eyes scanning the file list. "There are spreadsheets," he said. "Documents, email exports." Ethan clicked a file labeled solvent_deliveries_Q3. A list appeared. Purchase orders, delivery schedules. A specific chemical solvent, industrial grade, delivered to multiple waterfront sites, including the loading dock, including the pump station. Maria's eyes narrowed. "That's your solvent pattern," she murmured. Ethan clicked another file. Witness_tracking. His stomach turned, but his face didn't. A list of names, addresses, work schedules, notes. Prefers morning walks. Lives alone. Dog vulnerable. Wheelchair access. Ethan's hands tightened around the mouse. Lucas's voice came out small. "That's stalking," he whispered. Maria's face hardened into something like stone. "That's targeting," she corrected. Ethan scrolled, and there it was. Dr. Lena Moore. Lab schedule, late shifts, Mon-Wed. Phone, tower near Canal Street. Retrieve drive. Ethan's eyes sharpened. "This isn't just a corporation," he said quietly. "It's an operation." Maria nodded. "Which means they have a plan for when this goes public," she said, "and they'll try to bury it." Ethan's voice stayed calm. "Then we don't give them time." Maria looked at him. "What are you thinking?" Ethan didn't rush. He didn't dramatize. He simply laid out the next steps like he was assembling a weapon from parts. "Copy everything," he said. "Multiple physical drives, hard copies where possible. Then we get a warrant for that maintenance shed and the Harbor Guard office network." Maria's eyes narrowed. "That's aggressive," she said. Ethan met her gaze. "So is kidnapping our forensic analyst," he replied. A beat. Then Maria nodded. "Okay," she said. "We do it clean. We do it fast." Lucas raised a hand slightly, like he was in class. He said. "If Miller's compromised," Maria's voice cut. "Miller doesn't touch this," she said. "He doesn't even know it exists." Ethan glanced at Lucas. "You just became the most important person in this building," Ethan said. Lucas's eyes widened. "I hate that," he whispered. Ethan continued copying files onto two separate encrypted drives, hands steady, heart controlled. But inside him, something had shifted, because now he had what the machine feared most. Not anger, not violence, not a hero's grand speech, evidence. And evidence, handled right, could cut through influence like a blade. His phone buzzed. A hospital number. He answered. "Cole." A nurse's voice, tense. "Officer Cole, this is Harbor City Medical," she said. "Your K9 unit. He's alerting. He's restless. He won't settle, and Dr. Moore keeps saying he's smelling something." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "What does she smell?" Ethan asked. The nurse hesitated. "Chemicals," she said. "Like sharp, like cleaning stuff, but stronger." Ethan's blood turned to ice. He looked at Maria. Maria saw his face and stiffened instantly. "What?" she demanded. Ethan's voice stayed calm even as a cold urgency sharpened his words. "They found her again," he said. Ethan was already moving. He didn't shout, he didn't curse, he didn't even quicken his breathing. He simply unplugged the second encrypted drive, slid it into his pocket, and turned toward the door. "Lucas," he said, voice flat. Lucas was already on his feet. "I'm with you." Maria caught Ethan's arm, not to stop him, but to anchor him for half a second. "Ethan," she said, sharp and low, "hospital is a public space. Cameras everywhere. If this turns kinetic—" "It won't," Ethan replied. Maria searched his face, reading the same thing she'd learned to read over years of command. Not rage, not panic. Intent. She released him. I'm rerouting units, she said. Plain clothes only, no lights. Ethan nodded once. They're using solvents, he said. Ventilation routes. They'll try to force a transfer. Maria's eyes narrowed. Negative pressure rooms, she said. They'll exploit that. Ethan was already halfway down the hall. Harbor City Medical rose from the street like a glass monument, bright, clean, and deceptively calm. The kind of place people believed bad things couldn't happen because it smelled like sanitizer and hope. Ethan parked 2 blocks out and walked the rest of the way. Lucas stayed half a step behind, silent now, every joke burned away by the gravity of what they were stepping into. Inside, the lobby hummed with late-night activity. Nurses moved briskly. A janitor pushed a cart. A TV murmured in the corner. Normal, which meant dangerous. Ethan scanned vents, exits, reflections in glass. Shadow's presence was a phantom pressure in his chest. He trusted the dog's instincts more than any camera. They reached Lena's floor. 2 hospital security guards stood near her room. Both looked relaxed, too relaxed. Ethan slowed, letting his badge hang visible. "Evening," he said. "Police." One guard smiled thinly. "Visiting hours are over." Ethan's gaze didn't shift. "Dr. Lena Moore," he said. "Federal witness, I'm authorized." The guard hesitated. His eyes flicked just once toward the end of the hall. Ethan caught it. Lucas did too. Ethan stepped forward, voice still calm. "Move," he said. That's when Shadow barked. Not from the room, from inside the ventilation shaft above them. A sharp, furious bark, muffled by metal, but unmistakable. Ethan's blood went cold. "They put him in the vents," Lucas whispered. Ethan didn't answer. He broke into a run. The room door was ajar. Inside, Lena was sitting upright in the hospital bed, eyes wide, oxygen mask half pulled away. Shadow was pacing, tracking, nose up, ears locked on the ceiling vent. A faint chemical smell burned Ethan's nostrils the moment he crossed the threshold. "Ethan," Lena breathed. "They tried to move me again, said there was a complication." Shadow started barking like he was on fire. Ethan was already at the wall panel, ripping it open. Above, the vent cover rattled softly. Someone was crawling. Lucas burst in behind him. "I called it in," he said breathlessly. "Maria's on her way." Ethan didn't look back. He reached up, fingers locking into the vent grate, and tore it free with a metallic shriek. The crawl space above was narrow, dark, and occupied. A pair of boots froze mid-movement. Ethan's voice dropped into that quiet register that carried more weight than shouting. "Come out," he said. Silence. Then a whisper from inside the duct. "This doesn't concern you." Ethan smiled, but it didn't touch his eyes. "It concerns my dog," he said. Shadow lunged, barking furiously, claws scraping metal. The man inside the duct panicked. That was the mistake. Ethan surged upward, grabbed the man's ankle, and yanked. The man crashed out of the vent in a tangle of limbs, mask, and hose, landing hard on the floor. A chemical sprayer clattered away, rolling under the bed. Lucas kicked it aside instinctively. Ethan pinned the man in one clean motion, knee in the shoulder, forearm across the chest. Hospital staff screamed. Security shouted. Ethan didn't move. "Don't," he said calmly to everyone. Maria's voice rang out from the doorway a second later. "Nobody touch him!" She strode in with 2 plainclothes officers, eyes taking in the scene in a single sweep. "Harbor guard?" she asked. Ethan nodded. Maria pulled cuffs from her belt. "You're under arrest for attempted witness tampering, assault, and—" She glanced at the chemical sprayer. "Whatever the hell that is." The man spat. "You're too late," he snarled. "It's already—" Shadow barked again, sharp, insistent. Ethan's head snapped up. "What?" he asked. Lena's eyes widened. "Ethan," she said. "The hallway, the janitor cart." Ethan turned. The chemical smell was stronger now, too strong. "Evacuate this floor," Ethan said immediately. "Now." Maria didn't question him. "You heard him," she barked. "Move!" Alarms blared, nurses shouted, doors slammed. Ethan grabbed Shadow's harness and ran. They hit the hallway just as a glass panel at the far end shattered, a chemical reaction igniting with a sharp whoomp. Smoke billowed, people screamed. Ethan pulled Shadow close, shielding Lena's room as the sprinklers kicked on, water hissing down like rain. Fire doors slammed shut. Containment. Silence, except for alarms and coughing. Minutes later, the fire department cleared the scene. Maria stood in the soaked hallway, water dripping from her hair, eyes blazing. "That was deliberate," she said. Ethan nodded. "They're escalating." Maria looked at the cuffed harbor guard man being led away. "And they're running out of room." Ethan looked down at Shadow, who finally relaxed, just a fraction. "You saved her," Ethan murmured. Shadow leaned into his leg, silent, steady. Lena watched from her bed, tears streaking down her face, not from fear this time, but something closer to relief. "They won't stop," she whispered. Ethan met her gaze, his voice quiet and unshakable. "They don't have to," he said. "We're finished waiting." By dawn, the city woke up to headlines. Not rumors, not whispers. Documents leaked, videos published, emails forwarded to the DA, the state AG, federal oversight. Harbor guard offices were raided before noon. Corporate boards panicked. Phones rang. The machine stuttered. Ethan stood on the hospital roof as the sun climbed over Harbor City, the river glinting gold beneath it. Maria joined him, coffee in hand. "You just made enemies with money," she said. Ethan didn't look away from the horizon. "Money runs when light hits it," he replied. Maria studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Lena's safe," she said. "Witness protection's moving fast." Ethan exhaled, not relief, but release. Shadow sat beside him, gaze locked on the waking city. Lucas appeared, limping slightly, grin tired but proud. "So," he said, "I think I aged 5 years." Maria smirked. "You did." Ethan finally allowed himself a small, real smile. The city below kept moving, boats on the river, traffic humming, people unaware of how close something ugly had come to winning. But it hadn't, because one officer had refused to look away, because one dog had smelled the truth before anyone else, and because justice, when built carefully, patiently, and without fear, could still stand its ground. The press conference was scheduled for noon, but the city felt different long before the microphones were set up. It was subtle at first, emails sent too quickly, calls returned too slowly. A kind of institutional hesitation that spread when people realized the usual shortcuts no longer worked. The Waterfront redevelopment banners still hung from fences, but now they looked less like promises and more like evidence. Ethan didn't attend the conference. He stood in a quiet corridor on the hospital's lower floor, leaning against a window that overlooked a service alley most people never noticed. Shadow sat beside him, posture relaxed but alert, the way he always was when a threat had passed, but the world hadn't quite caught up yet. Lena's room was 2 doors down. She was packing a small bag under the supervision of 2 federal agents who moved with polite efficiency. Witness protection didn't announce itself with drama. It arrived with clipboards and calm voices and an insistence on leaving nothing behind. Maria approached, her expression tired but steady. "They're ready to move her," she said. "Out of state, new lab, new name if she wants it." Ethan nodded. "She deserves quiet," he replied. Maria studied him. "You don't," she said. Ethan's mouth twitched. "I'm used to noise." Maria glanced down at Shadow. "Your partner made a few friends with the feds," she added. "They're calling him the dog who broke the case." Ethan snorted softly. "He doesn't care." Shadow's ears flicked at the sound of his name, then settled again. Lena's door opened. She rolled out slowly, her wrist braced, her posture careful but upright. She looked smaller without the tension, lighter like something had been unhooked from her spine. When she saw Ethan, she stopped. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lena said quietly, "They told me you don't want credit." Ethan shrugged. "Credit doesn't hold up in court." She smiled faintly. "No, but courage does." She looked down at Shadow, who rose and stepped toward her, tail wagging once, measured, respectful. She reached down, resting her hand on his head. "Thank you," she whispered, not to Ethan but to the dog. Shadow accepted it like it was expected. Lena's gaze lifted back to Ethan. "They would have erased me," she said. "Not just my work, me." Ethan's voice stayed calm. "They underestimated you." Lena shook her head. "They underestimated him," she said, nodding toward Shadow, "and they underestimated what happens when someone refuses to be quiet." Ethan didn't argue. The agents waited politely. Lena took one last look at Ethan, then extended her hand. Ethan took it, firm, brief. "Be safe," he said. She nodded. "You too." And then she was gone, wheeled down the hall, escorted into a future that wouldn't be easy but would at least be hers. The arrests came in waves. Harbor Guard executives, shell company intermediaries, a developer who resigned before the ink dried on the indictment. Officer Miller was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. His surprise lasted exactly as long as it took for the internal affairs notice to reach his inbox. The machine didn't collapse in one dramatic explosion. It fractured, quietly, thoroughly. Ethan watched it happen from a distance, the way you watched a storm pass once you were already inside shelter. 2 days later, he returned to the waterfront. The pump station had been sealed. Evidence tape fluttered in the breeze like tired flags. The river moved on, indifferent, as always. Ethan stood at the fence line with Shadow, hands resting loosely on the leash. Lucas jogged up, still carrying too much energy for someone who hadn't slept properly in days. "They're calling it a systemic failure," Lucas said, "which I think is code for we got caught." Ethan nodded. Lucas rocked back on his heels. "You ever think about how close that was?" "All the time," Ethan replied. Lucas hesitated. "You gonna take some leave?" Ethan looked out over the water. "No." Lucas smiled, small but genuine. "Didn't think so." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Lucas cleared his throat. "For what it's worth," he said, "I learned something." Ethan glanced at him. "What's that?" Lucas shrugged. "That being calm doesn't mean you're not angry. It just means you know where to put it." Ethan considered that, then nodded. "That's about right." Lucas grinned. "Cool. I'm going to try that next time my mom calls." Ethan almost smiled. That night, the city settled back into its routines. Traffic hummed. Restaurants filled. The river reflected neon and moonlight like nothing had happened. But something had changed. Not in headlines, in posture. Ethan walked the riverwalk with Shadow at his side, the leash loose between them. Shadow's gaze moved constantly, reading people, shadows, reflections, while Ethan's eyes stayed forward. They passed joggers, couples, tourists. No one recognized them. Ethan preferred it that way. At the edge of the walkway where the old infrastructure met the new, Ethan stopped. He rested a hand on Shadow's harness and breathed in the night air. "You good?" he murmured. Shadow leaned into his leg, solid and warm. Ethan closed his eyes for just a second. He thought of Lena, rebuilding somewhere quiet. He thought of Maria, still holding the line. He thought of Lucas, learning faster than he realized. He thought of the machine and how it had failed, not because someone smashed it, but because someone refused to let it lie. Ethan opened his eyes. The city was still full of shadows, but tonight at least they were watched. Shadow lifted his head, ears forward, sensing something Ethan hadn't yet. Ethan followed his gaze down the riverwalk, toward a flicker of movement, a raised voice, a moment that might turn into something more. Ethan tightened his grip on the leash, just slightly. Not in fear, in readiness. They stepped forward together, calm and deliberate, moving toward whatever came next, because that was the code, and because some lines, once drawn, didn't fade.